Peace, y'all. We're back. I forgot to bring the camera in with me last night, so I didn't get to put up the video right before this one until, right now. So here we go. I think, what the heck is telling Chris? What's up, Chris West? Peace, brother. His third generation, his little boy Maverick, third generation West. He's got himself a little kid cart, and they've been taking him out to a parking lot, running it around, and he's par for the course with the historic West family. They took it out, ran it around. He said, man, he drove it for like an hour. He was having a great time. But we come home and had some dinner, and the kid said he wanted to go back out. So Chris told him, after dinner, we'll take you back out. So they took him back out, and he went to pull start the little Comer, and he said it was locked up. He says, he looked at his kid and said, you blew it up. Come and find out that something fell apart inside the clutch. And he said when he tried to push the go-kart, it was like direct drive. I said, yeah, you botched something up in the clutch. So his kid's already broke something, and he hasn't even made it out of a parking lot yet. So way to go, Chris. Way to go, little Maverick. Harry, Grandpa Harry's probably happy too. The kid's getting enough time on it to hurt it and blow it up, or break it. So good on you guys out there in mid-Michigan out there. Back, a quick update. I got some of this stuff worked up. This is going to be the intake for the big carb setup, for the big flange, right? So what we did is took a 2.5 inch or something. I think it was 38 millimeter hole saw, and with a hole saw, it is going to warble a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit bigger. It's actually like 39.5. We're real close to the 40 millimeter hole we already need, right? So went ahead and bored the holes in it for the mounting holes. We'll go ahead and countersink so we can use the bolts that come with the stock standard intake. Let me grab this thing here, and we can go get it on the cart and and what we need to do is match the 40 millimeter hole in this here up to the 40 millimeter hole in the conveyor, or as we Americans call it, the stuffer in the reed cage. Once it's matched up, then we can, we're back off. We take it off. I've already used the transfer punch and got this thing situated where we're going to want it. And from there, once we get the 40 millimeter hole matching the reed cage, then it's just a matter of marking this out, right? And then just tapering this hole, beveling the hole, and making it go from 45 down to 40. We're not going to mess around with opening up the hole in the reed cage or in the stuffer. It's about as big as it's going to get without destroying that stuffer. I mean, grinding it right down to nothing. You'll end up looking like this, right? Where this is the reed cage, and 45 millimeter hole would go past it. I mean, it's not going to do you any good to make it wider but not taller. So we'll stop there. It'll keep everything flowing and good. So we got a little bit of work done yesterday. Also with the intake, the current intake for these. I say the little carb, but it's a 40 millimeter carburetor, man. It's not really small. Made a gasket, made our own gasket for it, and went ahead and even after going over to Rich's place and clocking that thing, like I said, getting the needles angled up toward the driver, making sure we're missing the clutch cable and the perch for it, and making sure that the apparatus for the throttle linkage on the carburetor isn't hitting the motor mount, that it's aimed in a direction where the cable can feed into it and all that kind of stuff. We come up with a happy spot. We marked it, and then came over here and made the gasket, matched it up to the carb, and then went ahead and transferred the holes with the punches. We use, of course, I don't have any. I have transfer punches, but I don't have any metric transfer punches. You're all English. So what you do is it's not rocket science. You wrap a little tape around, right? So what we did here, I'll show you. There's the nut on the inside of the housing, and then this cap, or this retainer that's a little bit different size, right? So we put them through from this side here. So the tape is to keep it so it's still centered in that little cap, right? So it won't move around all that much. So they sat right in there. We put two of these in. Did we use this one or did we use? Yeah, we used two. And so what we did is we wired the throttle open so we could see through it. And then after we had outlined the carburetor using the gasket as a template, we went ahead and lined this all up, right, and made sure that through the throttle bore that it was even with the hole that's already in the aluminum here. And then we just bang, bang, we hit the two transfer punches and transferred our marks through. So there you go. That's where we're at. That's your little update. We did get some work done. It's not up and running yet. I have to go to Metrics Unlimited just across town and get some metric studs because the little Tillotson carburetor is going to require studs here. Because this is staying with the smaller of the two carburetors as a kit. This one will be for the big one. We won't have to worry about taking out studs and putting a big rubber flange on this one here. This whole program, 6 bolts. The only downside is with this big flange, as you can see, we'll show you with the gasket here, or the template. It's gonna partially cover 2 of these bolts. The bolts that mount it to the motor, to the gasket surface of the motor, where the reed cage is at. So it covers this one and it covers this one. So we won't be able to leave the flange on and remove the 6 bolts, right? Or install the 6 bolts. So if we're going to change from the smaller carb setup to the bigger carb setup, we remove fuel line. We remove throttle cable. With this carb, we should be able to take all 6 bolts off, take the whole carb and everything right off, without having to remove the carb from the intake or the plate. But if we do, it's just the two nuts that hold the carburetor on, easy peasy, right? Then it's 6 bolts to put this one on, 2 more bolts to put the flange on, and then a hose clamp to hold the big carburetor in the flange. And we're, fuel line back on, throttle cable back on. As long as the throw is the same on the 2 carburetors, there might be a little bit of adjustment. But I could see us doing this if we were going to try first the small carb, then the big carb at a place like a Daytona or an MIS type of test or something like that, where the big carburetor is really going to be beneficial over this standard 40. That whole process shouldn't take you more than 20 minutes. 25 minutes. At Daytona, if we go out, and we do 2 rounds of practice with the little carb, we get some mile per hour, data. Obviously you get some lap time data, you get some RPM and temperature data and what have you. And then you come in and you spend, half an hour or so doing this. Because there's 4 groups, if it took half an hour, if it took 45 minutes, push it back, get it changed and push it back out, we still don't miss a round of practice. Even if we do miss one, generally, I think there's 5, maybe 6, surely 5 rounds of practice all day long at a Daytona, at a race program at Daytona. If we miss one, we get 2 with this one, and we'd get 2 with this one, and we'd know for sure in real time in the same weather, conditions, and track conditions or what have you, even though it could change morning to afternoon a little bit. All at the same time, we can compare one carburetor to the other, and I'm pretty convinced the giant. I'm going to call it the big carb and the giant carb. The big carb is going to work. I think it's going to work fantastic. It's going to give us the throttle response we want. It's not going to hurt the low end because we got the big volume pipe with the longer head pipe on it. So we shouldn't be having any problem with bottom end. We didn't have any problem with bottom end with the Watercraft carb. Mid-range was still good. Top end, we don't really know because we didn't really get to dial on it because it wasn't running clean off the bottom. But the big carb is gonna, I think, is gonna be the cat's meow, and the giant carb is going to be the one to have at a place like Daytona where you are a minute of wide open throttle, at least 45 seconds or more of 6th gear terminal velocity, 30 seconds, surely half the time you spend on the oval being about a minute being as fast as the car was going to go. 6th gear all the way up, foot to the floor. Hold on, that's, so, and I think the big carburetor is going to help us there. But we'll see. We're how long we can get the studs tomorrow. We got a trip to run over to the Alro Steel to the metal joint and pick up some bits and pieces, some for Rich. Was over at Rich's house dealing with him and his vintage cart and the brakes and all that kind of stuff. So we got a little running around to do, but I could inevitably, in all reality, probably have this thing running tomorrow if we want to. But here we are. It's not quite the beginning of May yet, and there isn't really anywhere for us to go until mid-Ohio, and that's second week of June. So man, we still got 8 weeks. Short of setting something up at Grattan on a weekday, right? Like we had talked about doing, and getting out there. So maybe that'll happen. Who knows? We got a couple of Mondays set aside in May that we could drive out there. The guys on Sunday drop off, spend a night, whatever, get a hotel, camp, whatever. Because by then the weather's going to be, I'm sure 3-4 weeks from now we'll be into the good weather. Especially comfortable sleeping overnight, no heat needed, stuff like that. And we could get a day in, just to run it with the small carb, just to get an idea of what we got going before we try to go jump in at Mid-Ohio. And again, Mid-Ohio would just be a test for us. I suppose we could line it up and run it, and if things are working well, and they're working in our favor, then we'd continue running it and run the whole distance. If things weren't really up to snuff and we weren't crushing them, then we're there to test, and we could pull it in and make adjustments, or we could just pull it in and call it a day. But we're coming down to see picking up our special project for the summer and a bunch of parts and pieces that go with it, so we can build up that project. And we're supposed to meet our buddy Ben Hur there. He's an Ohio native. I think it's Columbus, right? If I'm not mistaken. If I am, I'm sorry. I know we're not real big fans of Columbus, Ohio up here in Michigan. So for other reasons. But Ben's going to come, and I guess he's coming to Mid-Ohio. It's been a bunch of years since he's been back home. Him and a wife, I guess she's from Ohio as well. So they're going to rummage around the state and visit with friends and family, maybe even up here in Michigan. He mentioned maybe being able to come up here, and he's bringing something back that we may be interested in. So it's a never-ending shitstorm here at RBM, where we're always taking on more than we have time to do, and hopefully we'll at least get the stuff done on time for the guys that are waiting on it. Our own stuff, if it don't get done, it don't get done. But when you're doing work for other people, you like to get it in and out as quick as you can, because they're going to want to play with it as quick as they can. So that's it for the 24th, I believe it is today, April, Sunday. Again, you see here I am out here in shorts today, right? Right? First time these white legs have seen the sun since Daytona. It's almost 80 in here. Yep.